Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we are back talking about Superman today, and we're talking about, well, back in the good old days, before the age of smartphones, they used to have these things called phone booths. So if you were out and about and you needed to make a phone call, you needed to reach out to a friend, you needed to call home, you maybe had an emergency and you just need to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, and you did not have a phone in your pocket, you did not have an opportunity to kind of stop in somewhere, you were just out on the streets. Well, what would you do? Well, you would go to a phone booth and then you would pop in some coins, you would call the operator, you would ask them to connect you to whoever you wanted to talk to, or you might just punch in the number for who you wanted to talk to. In the world of Superman, however, the phone booths meant a lot more, and it became an iconic part of Superman's identity over the years. And well, unfortunately, the world we live in today, we do have smartphones, and we no longer have phone booths, at least for the most part. I mean, if you go to London, they still have phone booths, but if you go to New York City, we very much don't have phone booths anymore. And of course, the world of Metropolis that Superman inhabits in the comics, and it looks like also in Superman the movie coming out next year that James Gunn is directing, we're gonna have, you know, uh, or actually, I should ask the question: are we gonna have a phone booth? That's the question we're gonna address today. And to address that question and so much more, as always, with me today, I've got John. How are you doing today? And what do you think about the idea of phone booths in the world of the DCU?
I think I was thinking about this. I forget which again. The amount of Superman stuff we've done is all blended together. But during one of the more recent episodes, we talked about, sort of like that timeless feel of Metropolis. And that's what it feels like James Gunn is doing. Because even though they have smartphones, because there have been various set photos where people are taking pictures of Superman, but at the same time, they're wearing sort of a more generalized wardrobe and a lot of like earthly tones, which fit into kind of the 70s a little bit, like browns and oranges and greens and that sort of thing. Tan, maybe, beige. And that fits into more like those were colors that were very big in the 70s, like orange shag carpeting, very 70s. So with that, and so like with the vibe we're getting here, it's not exactly like 70s chic or that sort of
Right,
wardrobe, especially when we have hipsters who borrow a lot of their
right.
wardrobe from older decades. So there is that as well. So we're bringing that timeless feel. Daily Planet has an Art Deco vibe similar to Superman Returns. So we have a lot of these aspects here, and even though there are, phones about, they still have newspapers, printed newspapers. Yes, they are online and they have a mobile app, but they do still have printed newspapers in those little things where you stick a quarter in and then you can pull the thing and grab a newspaper. Um, they still have those, and those are still being circulated. So it's entirely possible that despite smartphones, they still have phone booths for whatever reason. So, and that could be the case. I also offered something that would be a little bit more modern because it was based off an actual idea that New York was going to do, but then it never became anything. I think it was just an idea that was proposed and then went undeveloped due to maybe budget, maybe something else. I don't know. Where they were going to turn old phone booths into Wi Fi hotspots so that if you are like really desperate to do something to get somewhere, to like be online for something, maybe your job, and you're like, oh, my boss needs like this report done in 5 minutes, yet I haven't reached my office yet. Well, I can just duck into this Wi-Fi hotspot and like write it up and send it to him. So that was the plan, but never went through. I remember reading that somewhere, but that is a way of like reintroducing the idea of a phone booth, just modernizing it. And that would be where, have the classic thing of Superman changing in one of those hotspots. So it's like it's modernized, but it's like, which could be seen as cringy, but like Clark Kent is like already a cringy kind of dorky individual. So I think that fits. Um they can even do something, I think you mentioned this, where that was like Superman maybe tries to duck into one of these like phone booths or Wi-Fi hotspots or whatever it is, and someone's using it, and he's like, "Do you mind?" And he's like,
Right, yeah.
no, it's fine." And then he
Right,
like
yeah.
tries to go to another one, and then it works, and then he's changes into Superman. So yeah, that's
It's
it was done it was introduced in the 40s, and it's been used in plenty of
yeah,
adaptations since then. So it would be nice to
yeah.
see, since we're going for more of that timeless classic kind of vibe. I would like to see that. I think that would be fun. Maybe not a major thing, but like maybe he, it would be really funny. This would be like so ridiculous. But since you mentioned London phone booths are still a thing, and I've
Yeah.
been there. I went there about like 10 years ago, and they still have them. I don't know if they still
Hmm.
have them
No, they
now.
do. They do.
So
It's
he could
yeah.
like be like, oh, I have nowhere to change. Screw this. And then he like runs all the way to London,
Hmm.
changes in the phone booth, and then goes all the way back to America. I mean, Superman is that fast.
Yeah.
And like he can and he can
Oh
like
yeah.
save the day. And then like
Yeah.
he goes back, and then maybe he's like saying this to Lois, and she's like, why not just fucking like go into like a dumpster or something, or just like go in an alleyway? Like, why did you go through all that effort? Like, that could be kind of cute. But I do hope phone booths, the idea of like him changing in one, kind of makes a comeback a little bit, just like adding to the vibe that I feel like James Gunn is going for. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that the idea of a phone booth and its association with the character goes back to the 1940s. Like it was first introduced in in newspaper comic strip in 1942, as you see on this website, supermanhomepage.com, which is a great website for all your, if you want to learn about the character Superman, got
Yes.
all the knowledge that you can possibly find. And they give you this strip here, and like you could just imagine this being something that Superman would say in an old 1940s radio drama for Superman. Like
Yeah.
I just love the lines there.
Yeah, like, this
Like,
definitely isn't the most comfortable place in the world, but switch garments, I've got to change identities and hurry. Like, that kind of like, yeah, she,
yeah, yeah, just
I
like
gotta change in a
like you
hurry.
were
Like,
like you were
I
talking
gotta, I
about like
gotta
a William
change.
Shatner esque sort of a
I don't know, like
vibe.
maybe William Shatner in that one episode of Star Trek where they have to go back to
Yeah.
the 1940s. City on the other side of the, what was the name of that episode?
Oh God, no, I
Oh,
don't.
where he like where Kirk falls in love with the woman. It was that episode written by Harlan Ellison where he falls in
Dude,
love with
it's
her,
like
but like
you just
saves her.
described many episodes. Kurt
I know,
falls in love with a
but it was
woman.
like it was like
It's
one of the most, where he falls in love with this woman from like the 30s, but she has to die or else the timeline is gonna get fucked up. And like they find like a portal on an alien world, like it's like city on the other side of the something or other. Like it was like that. Like in that episode, he like goes back to the 30s, so he has to talk like he's from the 30s. But yeah, that's what I think of if I think William Shatner in 30s. But there
yeah.
was also an alien planet where they go down, and like I think like an
I mean, he falls
exploration
in love with like an
crew.
android woman in like season 3, was it, or something? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like
he crashes. I think it was like there was an episode where there was like this gang war, but everything looked like it was from like the 20s. And I where,
like West
because
Side
wasn't it
Story almost.
like there was like this
Yeah,
book that was like explain that was like the history of the 1920s, and this alien
yeah.
planet where that was on the brink of extinction or something. Like they found this book and used it to like reinvigorate their society or something, to the point where they like dress and look like the 20s. Forget
Hmm.
Piece of the Action. That's what that one's called. I need to find the other one, the Harlan Ellison episode. But Piece of the Action was that one, was the 1920s one. But yeah, sorry,
That's a good
going on a
shout. Good
tangent
shout.
about Star Trek,
No, but
but
it's
yes.
I mean, hey, if Superman was, I don't actually know if well, because he, of course, William Shatner was known for Star Trek at the time, but I could have imagined there being a time where he could have fit
City on
into
the
that
Edge of
mold.
Forever, by the way, was the name of the episode.
That's a really
Uh,
cool name, by the way. City on the Edge of Forever. That could be,
yeah,
what's the floating city, the Kryptonian city that's sort of floating in space?
Argo
Um,
City.
Argo City. That could
Argo,
be
fuck yourself.
Argo. That, I mean, that could be a great name. I mean, I think it just it sends me back to the TV show Krypton, which I think did a fantastic job with just the idea of kind of talking and dealing with just the world of
Yeah.
Krypton.
But yeah,
Um,
that was the episode that Harlan Ellison wrote. He hated it because they kept like rewriting it. And I think
yeah.
they adapted his original script into a comic book, which was just City on the Edge. Um, So yeah, that
That's really
was
cool. I just love the idea. But
yeah.
when you
The
when you
thing is, I
tell
barely
me,
watched Star Trek, but
yeah,
I know these episodes because I've like known a little bit from like when my
dude, but
dad
it's
watched it and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I grew up loving sci-fi, and Star Trek, of course, is one of the best ones out there. I still watch Star Trek today, and then just watching those old shows, it's kind of like watching an old like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. It just takes you back into a different time, even though
yeah.
those movies and TV shows precede the time that we ever lived in ourselves personally. It just sort of, if you want to get there's a certain sense of escapism you get from that kind of nostalgia that you don't
Hmm.
get from a movie that or TV show that is made today, even if it is meant to be a period piece. It just doesn't have that feel, right? Like it's rare that you get a movie like The Lighthouse, which is not only made in the here and the now, but it feels like it was made and a story that is being told for a time that is way in the
Hmm.
past. I think though with Superman, the new movie that James Gunn is directing, the aim is to kind of be timeless, and I do believe that a phone booth can fit into that equation. In fact, we put up a poll in one of our recent shows, and it was and in the live chat, and you guys voted on the question: will this Metropolis have phone booths? And overwhelmingly, I mean, it's not a ton of votes, but like 77% of you guys said that yes, you would want, this Metropolis will have, phone booths versus 23% that said no. And it comes down to that again, that timeless feel of this Metropolis. Like you look at the way the people are dressed, even though you've got these futuristic elements like the jetpack that Mr. Terrific is riding in on, and the suits that the Terrifics was Justice League International with Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are wearing, you still have like people sort of dressed up in this timeless fashion where it has that Art Deco feel. Of course, the all the artwork behind what we are seeing with Metropolis itself, whether it's the Daily Planet, the buildings, the fact that they're shooting it in Cleveland, which very much is a departure from the Zack Snyder version of Metropolis that we most recently saw in movies, which was meant to be like these twin cities with Gotham and Metropolis across the bay, and they both look like modern day New York or LA. We're going back to a more of a, Metropolis is in the heartland of America. It's in the middle of America, but it is very much like a version of New York, but it feels at the same time it's got a certain gothic and art deco vibes to it, which I really love. Like I mean, and so a phone booth would fit into that idea very much perfectly. And to that end, I wanted I mean, we already kind of talked about how phone booths might work in a modern setting, but do you think we're gonna get a scene of Superman actually changing in a phone booth within this movie?
I think so. I think Gunn will go that far. He's already like given us a lot of like kind of old school twinges. Like I don't know if we'll get it like as like a major part in the film, like maybe towards the end where he's
Yeah.
like where he like gives us that classic like sort of into space smiles to the camera kind of thing, and or he like changes one last time. He like goes into a phone booth, changes, and then he like just flies up into the sky
Yeah. I
to the
mean,
next threat.
the on-screen history of the character changing in phone booths is pretty extensive. This image is from Superman 4 Quest for Peace, where he sort of changes in a phone booth at the United Nations. And then in Superman 2, it's not so much a phone
I
booth, more of
think
a
it was
photo
Superman 1 or
booth.
2. I don't
One or
exactly
two.
remember
It's
what
one
it
of the
was.
two, but you could tell like it's a booth of some kind where he has to kind of go in, and so that nobody kind of knows that he is Superman. Although in real life nowadays with security cameras and whatnot, you kind of step into a phone booth that's looking like one person, come out looking like somebody completely different. People will notice at least eventually. And of course, Lois and Clark, the TV show, you can see there Dean Kane, just like that luscious head of hair, and um, that version of Superman. Like I grew up watching that TV show, and so I always have a certain level of fondness for it. So that logo also is just that version of the logo we really haven't quite seen since. And then of course in Smallville they did it too, like in a more understated sense. But there you go. Um, they had Clark changing in a phone booth there. It doesn't say telephone; it just says phone, which I'm like, can we just why didn't they just write a telephone? That was very
Why write telephone when you
2000s
could just write phone?
phone. It's a very 2000s move where it was like it's got to be for the here and the now, and we don't do things that way anymore. Whereas
Yeah.
nowadays, I think
Although at this point,
period pieces are
this was
back
a
in style.
fast forward, so this would have been
Yeah,
like 10 years from that point, which is I think this was like from season 2 or 3 or 4 which would have been in like 2003 or 4. 10 years down the line would have been 2014, and everybody would have had a fucking smartphone by that point.
Yeah,
So I just
exactly.
think that's
Well,
kind of
but that's the
amusing.
thing. Nobody thought smartphones would be a thing. People probably thought like Blackberries and Nokia, like, like the ones that sort of like slid open and had like, I don't know. I had like a Sony Ericsson which had like a
Uh,
pen, like a thingy. Like
I had
that
Sony
was
Ericsson, which
the
was like a PSP
technology of it.
Go, and it like
Oh yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
like that thing was a pile of shit. Like it was good for like a little bit, and then like the backlight broke.
Like PDAs back then. Yeah.
So I had to like partially open the PSP Go to make the backlight work. So I would like have the thing half open so I can actually like look at my phone, and eventually it just totally fucking busted. And I was like, well, what do I do now? So I had to get before I could get an upgrade, I had to get my sister's old phone, which went to my dad, which then went to me. So that was fun. It was a good phone. It was like an LG, it was like a slide phone, where it had the QWERTY keyboard. I miss QWERTY keyboards. I miss them so
Dude,
much.
it's well,
They
I mean, you have them on smartphones, like
yeah, but like
it's not a
not a
physical key.
physical.
I know the tangibility of it. Yeah,
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 I miss it.
I mean, it's definitely something that, sometimes I wish would, come back, make a comeback. But it's also like the idea of Superman changing in a phone booth and just as a nod, like to the tradition, like you could see it's entrenched in our culture and in terms of the iconography we associate with the character of Superman. Like this is on Route 66, out in Illinois, and they've got this just installation standing there with the Superman statue. I've been to a movie theater in New Jersey where they have like a bunch of different like displays. One of them like from the Terminator Judgment Day with
Mhm.
Arnold's T1000, and then there was one with Christopher Reeve Superman, and there was a phone booth. Like it's part of Superman's identity. It's been a part of and Superman has been around since 1938, and the phone booth has been around since like 1942. The idea of Superman changing in a phone booth. So it is so quintessential to the character that it doesn't need to be a big significant part of the film, but we currently live in a time where essentially I remember back a few years ago when Deadpool 2 was coming out, part of its
I was
marketing
gonna mention
was
that too.
the whole sequence where he's like changing and trying to get into the Deadpool suit, and meanwhile like everybody's getting killed, and he's like, and it turns out like, oh, too late. That whole I'm like, we were so used to the parody. I think the whole idea of James Gunn trying to bring back that quintessential timeless essential Superman, the definitive Superman, kind of certainly the closest thing to it that we have gotten since Christopher
Mhm.
Reeve Superman. I think part of that
Yeah, and I
quest
think you could play with the
has to
idea
be
very
bringing
much
back like
so.
the phone booth. You
Yeah,
know?
I think you could definitely make like a good joke with that. Whether you do
Yeah,
just have a phone booth, whether you do like
yeah,
have the more modern, like, oh, it's a Wi-Fi hotspot, or
yeah,
like somebody's in the booth and he like
yeah,
just play with it. Or like I think another really good idea would be like he's trying to find a phone booth, but all of them are
yeah.
decommissioned because nobody fucking uses them anymore. So he's like trying to find one. Because there is a scene in the original where he's, the open phone booth, like it wasn't like a booth, it was just kind of like a thing, just like a telephone in the ground, and it was like kind of covered
Yeah.
because he looks at that, he's like, I can't change in that, and like giving a wink and a nod to the whole
Yeah.
phone booth thing. But I think it'd be really funny if he's like trying to run around the city, like trying to find a fucking phone booth, but he
Mm-hmm.
can't because they just don't exist anymore because nobody needs them. So, and he finds one, and it's like
Yeah.
covered in graffiti. The phone is ripped off, and it like somebody took like a shit in the corner, like
Oh,
just like this
we don't need such
disgust.
graphic detail, but okay.
Just I'm just saying,
I
like
can
just
get
like
it.
it's just a
I can
gross
get with the
thing
program.
covered in
Yeah.
like ads for like strip clubs or something like that. Just like it's
Yeah.
just a really
Yep.
gross sort of thing.
Mhm.
That I think
I
that could be
smell
really
what you're
fun.
stepping into, Sensei, as Deadpool
Yeah.
would say. But hey, look, the idea of a phone booth existing in this world, just even the plausibility of it goes back to the fact that we have stuff like this from the set of this movie,
Hmm.
them filming Superman in Ohio. This is from the Cleveland set where we saw this as one of the articles from a Daily Planet front page, just talking about. This is clearly a reference to All Star Superman, where he's fulfilling a dream, like in this case, flying cancer patients to the Egyptian pyramids, and something that feels so quintessential Superman, so quintessential comics, that it's we live in a world where, movies, comic book movies have gone through the phase of being campy things for kids to being very legitimate movies that can not just be nominated for awards but actually win
Mhm.
Oscars, to now we're kind of, I think, moving in past that era where movies can be serious. You can take them,
Mhm.
as something that's very grounded, like or something that's dark, like Joker Fall You Do, or maybe even Captain America 4 next year. Or you can be more fantastical, and you don't need to be super grounded. Like you could do something like that, like the Suicide Squad, and the Daily Planet. The way it's portrayed here, the way we could potentially see a phone booth or set of phone booths across Metropolis,
Most
the
definitely.
way the people dress in this iteration of Metropolis, the way Superman's wearing, trunks on top of his costume, unlike what Henry Cavill Superman did. Um, and it just feels like we're getting this mix of timelessness, and so the idea of a phone booth works about as naturally as it would in, for example, the Art Deco version of Superman Returns, like the way that was portrayed. You could see a phone booth there. Similarly, I can easily see a phone booth being a part of this Metropolis. Um, if I were to just give you, the question that we did in the live poll, not that long ago in a recent episode, will there be a phone booth in Metropolis? Yes or no? What is your take?
I think so. I think it'll be like a tongue-in-cheek sort of scene, maybe at the beginning or the end of the film. I think it's gonna be like a cute little scene.
And then also follow-up question: do you think that's one of those things James Gunn is gonna want to keep a secret and shoot it in a soundstage, or do you think he's gonna end up doing it outdoors somewhere where we can easily get like set photos of it and then we'll know before the movie comes out?
I don't know if it would be a major thing to do on a soundstage, but he might do it because he's like, this would be a
Right.
cute thing to
I
keep a
mean, they might have
secret.
already done it. Like
Yeah.
they were shooting on sound stages or like remote locations like Svalbard in the Nordics, like for months. This movie didn't get to Cleveland until, what is it, like month 3 or 4? Because they started filming on February 29th, which was what
Month
the
4, yeah.
yeah, like that, February 29th being the birth of Superman, the character itself. But hey, we'll get to find out sooner than later how it all fits together. But before
Mhm.
we end the episode, as we always like to do, we like to feature your comments. And one of the comments that I wanted to feature today happens to be from one of our recent episodes. And this one is a little more Batman focused because we were talking about the idea, not the idea, but the news that Arkham Asylum, the TV series that was in development over at Max from HBO, was canceled or at least put on hold indefinitely. And we were talking about the idea of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, considering all the Batman IP that's already around with the Batman franchise, with that Matt Reeves is working on, with Brave and the Bold that is in development, with Joker Fall You Do coming out later this year, the Penguin TV series. So, My Dream in Orbit 9297 mentioned, as someone who loved the Batman movie, I'm not all that upset to see the Arkham show canceled or pushed back. I would rather see other non Batman related projects like Supergirl, Lanterns, Blue Beetle first before more Batman content. That to me is something that I can kind of relate to.
Yes.
I understand where he's coming from, and I sort of like, I'm like, okay,
Give
I see that,
other
I get
superheroes a
it.
chance.
Yeah, exactly. Like not every, I know that DC Comics stands for Detective Comics. So I know that, and I think John, you even though Superman is clearly like, the leader in all aspect, like whenever they put Batman and Superman together on screen in a Justice League context, Superman is generally tends to be the man leading the line.
Mhm.
Batman is ultimately, the character that has kept DC Comics up and running, especially going at the mainstream level for the last, like, better half of the last 3 decades. So it's understandable that they were developing so many series, including an Arkham Asylum series. There's still potentially a GCPD series out there, and of course, we have sequels to, the Batman, where there's a part two and maybe even a part three. We have got the Penguin, which might spawn other spin-offs beyond that. But the idea that, we don't have to live off the name Batman and the character of the Batman purely, I think is a very, let's just call it enlightened approach to the DC Comics properties that, under the leadership of James Gunn and Peter Safran, DC Studios is going in the direction of. Because for years Warner Brothers were like, anything Batman, we'll give you as many Batman as possible. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have had what four live action Batmen in the just the last 2 or 3 years. We had Ben Affleck's Batman from the DCEU. We had Michael Keaton's Batman come back in the Flash. We have seen of course the Batman Robert Pattinson. And it's not that long ago that we were watching Christian Bale play the Batman in the Nolan trilogy, and you can even look at other examples like the Batman that we got in Gotham, even though it was only for like the last episode of the show. There's enough Batman to go around. There's a Batman Cape Crusader series coming out. There's a new Batman Ninja versus Yakuza that anime series that is out on HBO Max, or Max. Um, there's a lot of Batman, and there'll always be a lot of Batman. Batman Brave and the Bold is going to be here before we know it. I have a feeling that even though it doesn't currently have a date, and we don't know how far along the script might be, and the director is busy with another TV series, it's very possible that we get that movie, announced with a release date sometime within the next year, and it might be coming our way as early as 2027, maybe even the latter half of 2026. Although that would be weird because they do have the Batman Part 2 coming out in 2026, but I could see that movie pick up steam pretty quickly because it would be interesting to wait for at least 2 or 3 years beyond the first Superman movie to introduce the DCU iteration of Batman. I think you need to get there a little sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe they do it in a TV show, but that's my guess. But having said that, we don't necessarily need another Batman property, another TV show, because we have the Penguin, we have all those animated projects we talked about, and we potentially still have a DCPD show set in the world of the Batman that's in development. So, what are your thoughts on the idea that this Arkham Asylum series being canceled or at least put on shelf indefinitely is a good thing?
Um, well, it would have been DCU, but even then, I understand like having all the Batman stuff. But he mentioned specifically the Batman, so that's why I'm mentioning that. Um, the thing is, I would have been really curious to know a bit more. Maybe that would have been for the worst, because then I would have known, gotten really excited, and then been
And then it would have been canceled. Yeah.
then my dreams would have been dashed. But like if it was like just about Arkham Asylum, just like the inner sanctum of that, like the inner like workings of that. I know, because I know like you have like A Serious House on a Serious Earth by Grant Moore. I believe that was Grant Morrison. That's like the most like famous like Arkham Asylum type, you know, story. I mean, it was used as the inspiration for Batman Arkham Asylum, the video game. So, um, it would have been interesting to see like just seeing villains just being themselves without Batman, and you could introduce a lot of like villains that you'll never fucking see ever, like fucking Quilt Man or like Calendar Man, maybe. But even then, you could probably do a Long Halloween adaptation later on. Like just a fucking Condiment Man. Give us like Condiment Man, or like something like that, where it's just like a guy who's like, that would be a good scene, like sort of a, because this would be a more serious level, like because it's like you're dealing with villains, a lot of fuck up shit. Anyway, um, a really good moment of levity would just be a guy at lunch and he's just putting on every condiment they have. And it's like they don't say Condiment King. They don't say Condiment King, but they allude to that. Like, and then like all the other villains are looking at him and he's like, shut up. And then he just eats a sandwich and it just like has like ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, pickles, relish, like buffalo sauce, barbecue sauce, and just like all these condiments like Worcestershire sauce, horseradish sauce,
Worcestershire.
blue cheese. Um, so just
Yeah.
like having a ranch, just like having a, just like really just like that would be like a good moment of
That's
like
very.
levity
That
and
sounds very much like something they would do in the Arrowverse. In fact, they probably did already do that in the Arrowverse. But
just like
yeah,
sort of like a stupid, like little
yeah.
levity joke kind of thing, and
Yeah.
like a serious, very serious,
Hmm.
like you could definitely do like a horror vibe where like somebody gets killed, and like
Yeah.
they have to shut down Arkham Asylum and like to find like, and like the and so then the orderlies get stuck in Arkham Asylum, and like maybe they have to like deal with like the villains and like have to you know um like not being able to leave, they go crazy, and like you have all that stuff, so that could be like a cool vibe. But like I feel
It could
like you could
almost be
do
like a
a lot
12
with
monkeys sort of a situation,
a
right?
little
Like
bit.
it's
Like I feel like you
like
could
if you
do a
want to
lot with
focus it
Arkham
on like one
Asylum.
character, so you're it's not just because you can either treat it like the Twilight Zone, or you can make it the story about like one particular character you follow and their journey, where they're like maybe they're not meant to be there, but they find themselves there, and it's just kind of the madness
Yeah,
of it all, almost like a Shutter Island, if maybe even. Um,
maybe
although like I
like a
don't, yeah,
henchman of like the Joker is stuck
yeah,
in there. Like instead of going to
yeah,
Bel Rev, he
hmm
goes to Arkham Asylum for whatever reason. Um, and then he's like kind of stuck there. That would be a really cool idea. Like you could do so much with Arkham Asylum. So I'm like kind of on the fence in terms of that aspect of like you could do so much, so many stories, so many different aspects, mystery, horror, fucking romance. Like it could be I
hmm.
love you, Philip Morris type of shit, or
By the way,
like
you know what I just realized? He's
or
walking
that
here and the umbrellas are black, but then
black,
maybe
and
that
then
other
he like
their color.
gets the musical
I did not
vibes.
notice
Yeah.
that until now. I'm like, so that's probably the beginning of a musical number. Anyway, sorry, continue. I'm distracted by the
No,
pictures
it's
on
fine.
screen.
It just you could do a lot with that. You could
Yeah,
do a lot with like Arkham Asylum. So on the fence, I'm like, I would have liked to have seen that sort of thing, like what they would have done. But on this, at the same time, I agree with him. Like, we're getting a lot of Batman stuff. We have Batman, Penguin, Batman, Cape Crusader, uh, Batman Ninja versus Yakuza League coming out soon. You have Folie Dieu. You have a lot of Batman and Batman spinoff content. So it's like it's for the best that maybe this got canceled for the time being. That is, I wouldn't
yeah,
mind want to seeing it like maybe at a time where like Batman has like calmed down a little bit and like you know just giving us a little bit of just breathe in, breathe out. Okay, let's then do some stuff. I wouldn't mind seeing that, but or like the GCPD show if that's still fucking happening. So who knows? But yeah, I think you could do a lot with that, but at the same time, wait until there's less Batman content,
yeah.
which will
There's
never
certainly,
probably be the case, but a man can
yeah.
dream.
I think it's probably like ultimately when we were talking about this the other day. For me, the reason why this probably happened that they shelved it was, I mean, ultimately when they worded it, it was more like Max decided not to move forward with it, and I know that the bar is pretty high at HBO for producing anything. Like they spent 50 million or something on a pilot for a Game of Thrones spinoff and then just canned it and then moved forward and tried other things, and that's how we got to House of the Dragon. So they probably were trying to figure something out with regard to what the story of this show is going to be. How is it going to fit into either the Batman universe, or like later on James Gunn in December, this past December 2023, clarified that this show, the Arkham Asylum show, was going to be on, or it was going to be a part of the DCU. But it could also be, one reason we didn't talk about is because the Batman and Brave and the Bold is still a ways off, and that story and script is not quite finalized. We don't even know who's going to be playing Batman, at least not publicly. Um, and the director is currently not even working on the project. It could be that Matt Reeves probably was looking at it and like, you know what, I want to make some creative decisions here, because they went through three showrunners. So clearly that tells me something, that the showrunner and Matt Reeves couldn't see eye to eye on what they wanted to do, and maybe even that the show was initially pitched as a spin-off of the Batman and then later on changed to being part of the DCU, and that kind of led to creative differences and people kind of
Hmm.
stepping in and stepping out of the job. But at the same time, because there's so much uncertainty or so little known about what Batman is going to look and feel like and what the world, I mean, we have some general idea. I know James Gunn probably has some plans that he pitched when they first had the whole announcement for the DCU slate, but I can imagine they don't have all the details figured out, especially when it comes to like, you're trying to make a TV series. You're gonna make some creative decisions. You're gonna lean in certain directions. You're
Mm.
gonna include certain characters and exclude other characters. And if they don't have a ton of direction, and they want to keep their options open for like the movie, which will probably be a higher priority project anyway, as it should be, especially
Hmm.
given that they're introducing the DCU Batman in it and Damian Wayne, the version of Robin. I can imagine Matt Reeves was like, you know what? I think we should like revisit this some other time, or like down the road when we have a
Yeah,
better
especially
idea
when
of
stuff is
what's
more
going on.
established, most
Exactly.
definitely.
like what's going on
Um,
with the DCU version of Batman before we
yeah.
actually get into doing a spin-off.
Although
Like
it
why bother
again,
developing it now?
I'm thinking more the creative side. It would be fun to like see all the villains sort of
It,
be introduced
it would be.
first, and then Batman, like you see the POV of the
Yeah.
villains. It's almost like that Batman the Animated Series episode Almost Got Him, where it was like it's just like the villains being the villains and it's just them in Arkham Asylum, and through their POV you get an idea of what this Batman is like, and almost like through the audience you see what the Batman is to villains, like that sort of like fear and that like that creature of the night sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, especially with like all the regular insane people,
Yes.
um and you and you get that would be a really cool idea, but I can see why that might be a little bit too much, because again it's too like experimental, and it's safer to be like, okay, this is Batman. But I'm just saying it would be a really awesome introduction to see, you know, how Batman is viewed by his villains, especially when this is seems like to be more of a veteran Batman, maybe not the level of Ben Affleck's Batman, but someone
Right.
who's been around the block a bit, especially when they're introducing Damian Wayne. So
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's potentially like I said, a situation where kind of like what's going on with the movie Blade over at Marvel. Like they've retooled that thing like 5 times and they still can't seem to get it right or like get it to a point where they want to actually put it into production to to the point that Marshall Ali might actually end up bowing out of the project entirely. I can easily see that being a similar situation here where they just couldn't land on something that was concrete enough that they liked some idea that they wanted to pursue. And they were probably also like, what's the name of the director again who's going to be directing Brave and the Bold? I keep forgetting
Andy
his name.
Muschietti, the
Andy
man who
Muschietti.
directed the worst DCEU movie. So,
I mean,
oopsies.
I wouldn't say the worst, but The Flash wasn't also the best
It's
either.
the
It was
worst.
middling. I mean, okay,
It's
it's we
bad.
each have
It
our
was
we each
bad.
it's
It was
we have our own
really
opinions on.
fucking bad.
I think I like the Michael Keaton moments, so I will say it wasn't completely
Okay, if I
irredeemable. There
want
were
to watch
certain
Michael
Flash
Keaton's
moments I
Batman, I'll
liked
just
too.
watch Batman or Batman Returns. Like, I don't need to see
That's fair.
him
That's fair.
as like a
I mean,
fucking decrepit hippie who wears flip flops, you
although, dude,
know?
the way he explains the multiverse idea and how timelines not just intersect like in the present and the future, but also how it screws up the past and how it would diverge completely with spaghetti and meatballs or like spaghetti and sauce, I guess. That was a more clever visual analogy than I've ever seen in any movie talking about the multiverse period. But all that to say, look, ultimately, it looks like this is a matter of the Arkham Asylum series just doesn't quite have a good fit, and maybe the timing is not right for this project to go ahead just yet. We know that HBO's Lantern series did get the green light at Max, and that is moving forward,
But
of course. So it's not, and we've got Baller, and we have also got Peacemaker season 2 already working. And if you
mhm.
are starved for Batman content, then on screen right here, you've got Joker for All You Do, Lady Gaga, Joaquin Phoenix, Todd Phillips coming back to direct. You've got this movie on the way. It's not that long from now, not that long from when we're doing this in July, that we're gonna get this movie out in theaters. And the first movie made $1 billion, and this movie, it looks like it could potentially exceed those expectations, even of the first one. It could either be really good or really bad, but if you're lacking or if you're starving for Batman content, then this is one of several things just within this year alone that you can go watch.
Yeah.
Because not only do we have this, we also have the Penguin. Like the Penguin
Yep.
is a direct spin-off of the Batman, so you can go watch that as well. Both, like, I think, in fact, when you look at the release dates, the Penguin is going to start airing in, was it September or this fall, they said. And then by the time it finishes its, I think, 8 episode run, we're gonna be around the time of the Joker Fall You Do coming out in theaters. So
Yep.
and then we have Batman Cape Crusader coming out in August, right? So
Mhm.
you've got Batman related content out the wazoo this year alone, not to mention what's
Yep.
going to be coming down the road. So you don't have to worry about being starved for anything Batman related. The fact that we have a Superman movie coming out next year, I think is more of a breath of fresh air than anything else, because it seems like DC
Definitely.
has been over reliant on the character of Batman over the last 20 or 30 years, especially since the Superman movies with Christopher Reeves came to a close, and then Brendan Routh Superman didn't quite work out. And then even Henry Cavill Superman, after Man of Steel, he never got another solo movie because Warner Brothers just weren't sure what to do with the character. But now under James Gunn,
because they're
we're getting to a
stupid.
point, where we're getting a certain, not just a renewed faith in the character of Superman, but something that, but he's trying to give us a universe that's built around the character of Superman in a way that feels more natural, more endearing than what the DCU ultimately ended up achieving, which, for the better or for the worse, is just how things were. And as much as I loved Henry Cavill Superman, we have to let him go. And we have, I think David Corenswet so far is, at least from the set photos and what little we have seen of him as Superman, it looks and feels pretty iconic. And as does the idea of having a phone booth, getting back to our original topic of the show, being a part of the movie. And I can't wait to see, even if it's like a small nod, a little gesture where, even if
Gotta
it's like
change
what they did with the
identities and in
Christopher
a
Reeves
hurry.
movie.
Let's go.
In a hurry. Yep. Even if he does his best
I've always thought about this,
person
like a quick
impression,
thing before we wrap
William
up.
Shatner.
I
Yeah.
never really thought about this. I thought about this. Well, I mean, it doesn't really count as recently, but during season 2 of Supergirl, she was like getting changed. Like she was ready to go on an alien world, and she was still in her Kara Danvers thing,
Yeah.
and so she
Yeah.
changed into Supergirl. I never thought about this, but like, it's something that's like really questionable. Where the fuck do they put the cape? And where the fuck do they get the boots? Because it's like
I
you
don't.
can't put
I
the
think.
boots on, like, you can't put normal shoes over your boots. And then where the fuck are you gonna put the cape? Like, is it just like in their pocket? Like, is it in a bag? Like, I know it's suspension of disbelief, but there's also the idea of like, where the fuck do they put that cape? Do they just tuck it into their pants? And he's just
Can
like,
you
and then
imagine?
just Superman
Because
is just
then he
dying
can't,
all fucking day, where he's like,
because he's getting choked.
hey
Like,
Lois, whew, man, it's a hot one today. It's 65 degrees. Yeah, but it's like, I'm really hairy, and it's just like, it's the heat in here. It's just like, there's no heat, Clark. What are you talking about?
just, yeah, no,
And it's
it's,
just like that
I,
that that
I,
that 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 cape is heavy too. Like, it's just like, and that's a big cape. It
I
goes
mean,
down to his ankle. So like,
it's, yeah, I do, like, honestly, all I can tell you is, I think you're overthinking it, dude.
I think
It's
I'm
a movie.
overthinking it, but I'm just saying,
It's a
like, it's just
movie. I know this is what the
now
comments
what
are
I'm
gonna
gonna
be
do
like,
is just
dude. I
gonna
think
be
you're
I'm just gonna
overthinking
put
it.
that idea in people, and now they're never gonna be able to unsee that, and I'm just gonna ruin it for a whole bunch of people. So if I have
It's,
to think about
hey,
this, now you have to think about this.
That's exactly why Deadpool has to carry his costume in like a big like duffel bag, and exactly why it took him so long to get dressed in a telephone booth, that the bad guys had already done their business and moved on.
Yeah, killed Uncle Ben. That
Y-
was the canon.
yeah, that was a canon. It just, it's maybe, but hey, you know what? Superman, the good thing, and that's working in Superman's favor, is he has super speed, so he
Yeah.
doesn't quite have to worry about changing too slow for the bad guys to get away with it. But hey, phone boots or not, we hope that Superman will, give a nod. That Superman the movie coming out in 2025 will give a nod to the classic trope of the phone booth, changing scene, or just, I mean, going back all the way to the 1942 newspaper comic strip where it was first introduced, all the way to the modern day where we might get it for the first time in live action, and certainly in a feature film setting, since the Christopher Reeves movies did it. We know that the Smallville TV series did it. I think Supergirl might have hinted at it as well. There's been TV iterations of that even in the Superman and Lois TV show, but hopefully we'll get it in the new Superman movie that James Gunn is working on. And we are certainly are seeing a very timeless Metropolis where a phone booth would not look out of place. And you guys, when we asked you in the live chat and we put up a poll, you guys, came up with 77%, an overwhelming
77.
response saying yes, we are going to get phone booths in this Metropolis. So hey, let's hope that we do see that and we do get that. But John, until we do see that on set, or maybe in a Comic-Con teaser, we're left to just speculate. And so I'll leave it up to you guys in the comments, in the live chat, in the comments down below. Let us know what you think. Do you agree with the folks that voted live on the show a couple of weeks ago saying yes, we will get a phone booth in Metropolis? or no, we won't get it. Does it fit in with this version of Superman that David Corenswet will be playing? Let
Do
us know
it.
in the comments. Like and subscribe as always. It lets you know when we have new videos going up, like this one, when we are live with new breaking news, and of course the notification bell, because that will especially help you know when we go live or have new videos going up. So we always encourage that. It helps us out with the algorithm. Certainly the like button definitely does that. And leave us some comments down below. Give us your fan theories. We love hearing from you about things like, who is Ultraman in this movie? Are we gonna have a phone booth? Um, we the other day we talked about Zaddy lovers. Go back and watch that episode. It has some nothing to do with phone booths and Superman, but we were talking about Batman too, so I figured I'd mention that. But John, as always, it's been fun talking to you about Superman the movie, which we do on a very regular basis these days, and I'm sure there's more news to come. I'm excited personally for Comic Con. I'm excited for all the DC content coming out later this year, whether it's a movie, TV show, animated series, even if it is something that is just a piece of anime that John doesn't seem to care for, but I would be interested in at least checking out an episode of Batman Ninja on Max and see how it is. But guys, let us know in the comments what you think about all that, and then we'll be back here with more DCU Daily tomorrow, the day after, and so on and so forth. We'll be here Monday through Friday from here onwards, and we are here with you on the journey and as part of this new universe that is the DCU. So I hope that John, I'll get to see you on the next episode, and we'll talk about probably more Superman. That seems to be the pattern. Until then, phone booths.
Mm-hmm.